Hello and welcome to the formidable Nürburgring here in Germany, the Week 11 venue for the iRacing Blancpain Sprint Series and our virtualracingschool.com video tutorial. I shouldn't have to tell you that obviously the Nürburgring Nordschleife is an extremely demanding, challenging, difficult, infamous, one of the longest road circuits in the world, and in this 24-hour configuration, at nearly 16 miles in length, it's quite something to get your head around. I've certainly been struggling the past few days, and I've done hundreds of laps here over the years, on the simulator obviously. Unfortunately I've not yet had the chance to drive it for real, but one day. I'm sure it's on most people's bucket list to do. Yeah, so enough rambling from me. I've done a 8-minute 15.1 qualifying fuel. A solid lap. I say that quite often. Currently about 5 seconds slower than the pole position, which sounds like a lot, but obviously when you consider the length of the circuit, it's not too bad. I'm hoping to certainly find a few more seconds over the next few days, but with so many corners, it rewards, just a sheer number of laps and practice time more than any other circuit. So yeah, what I'm going to do is to play the lap at full speed, and unlike what we would normally do, I will actually narrate it at times, just because I'm aware that it's a very long circuit and we don't want the video to take hours. So I'll try and give you some feedback on what I might have done wrong in this lap, what I did well, and then we will analyse it in further detail after that. So I just go to cockpit view, and so we're exiting the last few corners here, exiting onto the current Grand Prix circuit. Obviously concentrating on our braking zone for turn 1, just before the marker there. You want to keep it really tight there, let the car drop down, be really patient, waiting for the car to straighten up and then getting back onto the throttle. So yeah, just kind of being very gentle through these corners. They are actually cambered, so you can get on the power fairly early, especially on that one. The issue I have normally with that one is getting the car turned in early into Dunlop. Feels like a long time before you get onto the throttle always in that corner. The Schumacher S, trying to be smooth with the car, not to upset it too much. That was quite nice. Again, just teasing the car into the apex, opening it up on the exit, hard on the power. Through here, keeping the steering quite minimal. You can brake quite late into the chicane in this configuration because it's quite shallow. Take a reasonable amount of curb, as much as you can really, before you get an incident. And a very wide entry into this one will allow you a decent apex speed. Through this corner you have to be very, very patient and not too much throttle. This one, loads of speed on entry, an early turn in, hard on the power. Into this left-right sequence. That was quite nice. You've got to be really careful with these curbs here. They're super aggressive around the whole circuit, in fact. And with the Audi, it's especially sensitive to these curbs. It's also worth noting that I've worked on the setup in this particular round more than any other, so it's quite a lot more developed than the previous weeks. Purely because I wanted the car to behave itself if I did happen to catch a curve a little bit wrong. So I have actually looked at the dampers as well. So you can carry a lot of speed into here, a slight lift. Yeah, just be patient into this corner under the bridge, keeping the car on its line, avoiding these curbs, keeping it nice and straight. Ridiculous how much speed you can carry into here. I actually missed the apex a little bit there. You can actually clip the curb on the inside on that first left more than I did. Be patient here. That was nice. Slight lift, bit of braking. Yeah, because it's so easy to get onto the grass there. A slight confidence lift, and I still had oversteer. Slightly deep into that corner. This one's very tricky. You really have to avoid those curves, otherwise you're in a lot of trouble. There's like 3 apexes to this one, so you need to kind of bring your speed down into this tight left. It does open ever so slightly up before the first braking point there. We have to get back on the brakes hard. This is downhill, so you have to be quite tentative. A bit less speed than you probably think is possible. This one has lots of camber mid-corner, but then it kind of crests as you get over the top, and the car goes very light, so you have to be super careful on the exit on that one. Keeping it tight to the inside there. Into third gear. Aim for an early turn in there, and then the track opens up. I had some really nasty oversteer on the exit there. Just a little bit too wide that time. Just a little bit too much speed into the apex, which carried me out too wide. I wanted to commit to full power as early as I would like, because you've got this super long straight up this long hill. But the car just got slightly unsettled. But fortunately I was able to hold on to it. Lots of feathering lifting there because I was, you don't want to carry too much speed really. Well, you do, but you don't want to run out wide. I was flat out through that that right-hander. You need to keep it quite tight here. There's lots of track width to go wide, but you want to keep it tight. Into the infamous or famous carousel. I really dislike that one. Just feathering the throttle. I caught that exit curve on the right there, which wasn't ideal. Avoid these curves, keep it flat out. Bring the speed down a little bit on the brakes, and again even more. Back on the throttle again. Missed the apex there. You want to turn in earlier, and then that allow you to get back on the power earlier. You carry lots of speed into here, but a slight bit of lifting. And then you immediately want to start slowing the car down for the left, and then that'll give you a better line into the right. You can get fairly hard on the power there because it's uphill. You do need to slow down really soon for this left-hander, and then be really sort of patient and tentative on the throttle into the right. Up another hill, similar to the previous one, but more slippery on the exit. You can see I got big oversteer that time again. You can ride this curve on the right hand there, but you do have to lift, otherwise you'll be in all sorts of trouble. Again, avoid these curves. Lift off the throttle as you go over the jump there, and then feather the throttle to keep it tight, which will give you the right line into this sequence here. The line through this sequence is super important, because you don't want to be hitting these curves. The car will bounce around, take off, and all sorts of trouble. So if you want to keep it flat out through there, you've got to avoid the curbs. Bring the speed down again. Patient on the power here. Now you've got to be really, really hesitant and patient as you crest over onto this flat section. Especially the Audi, it's really unsettled as you crest over that cambered. This is the second carousel basically. Just kind of feathering the throttle, braking ever so slightly just to bring the speed down to where I feel I can get on to full power without hesitating right on the exit, because you've got to be committed onto the exit out of that one, because obviously you've got the super long straight where you can finally relax after the onslaught. Keep the car tight under the bridge, keep the car flat out, still flat out, only now are you on the brakes, and then you want to be aiming to use that curve on the right, because that will give you a better line out of the final corner and onto the start finish straight. Okay, so if we stop it, there we go. Yeah, so I believe that some of the time is lost where I'm just getting a little bit out of shape, and it's compromising my line, especially later on in the lap, in subsequent corners. And also one or two times I got a little bit out of shape on the exit of key corners. So, and the other thing really is just commitment. You kind of have to approach the circuit with a degree of self-preservation, whereby you can't just attack it flat out constantly, because it's so unforgiving. As I've said, if you do clip a curb even slightly in the Audi especially, you will be in all sorts of trouble. It's very, very hard to hold on to it. So yeah, I always find myself driving within myself more than any other circuit, really, because you just can't afford to overdo it. And because it's so long, you get fewer laps, so you see each corner far, far less than you would when practicing other circuits. So you know, there's no way of avoiding it. You have to invest more time. Yeah, I mean, I've been lapping the Nürburgring on and off in sims for many, many years, and it's still a struggle. So, but obviously, it's super, super rewarding when you do get it right. So, yeah, we'll go back through it and pause it when I feel the need to go into a bit more detail. So obviously you want a good exit over the start-finish line. Now the braking point for turn 1 is going to be about 125 meters. Let's just verify that. About 130 meters, in fact. So that was quite nice. You want to brake in a straight line up until about here. So you want to use all of the track, but then as you start to turn in and come off the brakes, you want to be aiming for a very, very, very tight apex. Now the track drops down a lot here, but running out wide, especially when you have this left-hander immediately following, is not good. So you want to keep it very tight to give you a wider entry into this next left-hander, which will allow you to get back on the power early and straighten it up nicely. Very patient on the entry into here, very slight braking, and again into the right-hander. Now I said before that often I find myself turning in too late and with too much speed into this right-hander, because the circuit's still kind of falling away. But onto the exit you can actually get onto the power about now as it opens up, because you've still got that sort of camber helping you around. You've got even more camber into the hairpin. My braking reference is just after this sort of dark curbing on the left, and keeping it tight again, just waiting, 80% throttle, waiting at full power as it opens up. A little bit of braking just to bring the speed down a fraction. You can use that exit curve there, this one here, you can use that exit curve, and then keep the steering very minimal here on the exit. Braking point is about 120 meters here. There's a dark area on the track which I look for and brake just before then. Into third, you can use a little bit more curb, but it's not always beneficial. That's pretty good, really. You have to be quite patient again on the exit. Trail brake to hit the apex of this one, so I'm trail braking all the way to the apex, and then onto 80% power. Circuit opens up. You can use a little bit of that exit curve. So we've said into this chicane in this configuration, it's faster, braking about 60 meters there. Lots of curb. I could probably use a tiny bit more than that before getting an incident, and maybe a bit more of that curb as well, but not too much. And being quite neutral on the throttle through that chicane, because you've got that high speed direction change, and you can induce oversteer if you're asking too much from the throttle. So bringing the car over to the right, braking it down into third gear, a nice wide entry which allows you to have a shallower radius of curvature. So but you do need to again be very progressive on the throttle. You can get a little bit too close to this wall, this Armco here. Obviously you don't want to do that. Normally it just gives you a Nortex, but that will invalidate the lap and frustrate you for the next 6 or 7 minutes. There's a little bump here, just there. You want to brake just on the bump. Because of the bump you can't brake too hard, because you'll lock up the wheels even with the ABS. Just to bring the speed down, keep it tight, turn in nice and early. The camber will suck you around. Get on the power early as well. Turn in early into this fast cambered right-hander, where the circuit kind of drops down hard onto the throttle. There was a slight lift there actually, which you do have to do. Again, you want to drive within yourself. And then into the next sequence, you want to be thinking about being very neat and tidy and thinking about line. So you want to bring the speed down, get tight to this curb, but not touching it. Get back on the power to bring the car back over to the right, about 80% there, back over to the left. Now sometimes I use this curb, sometimes I don't. It's a little bit risky to use it in the Audi, so I've not used it this time, so there's a little bit of time to be found if you do use it, but it takes confidence obviously. I've also clipped this curb on the inside of the next one, which I wouldn't normally recommend because I've had to hesitate on the throttle ever so slightly. You should be able to use this curb on the right, and then as the circuit drops down you can press it, recommit to full power. Again, being very smooth and minimal with the steering. So the car takes off ever so slightly as you head into Floodplatz. I'm sorry if I butcher some of these corner names. Obviously I'm looking at the map here, but there's so many, and then obviously they're not my native language, so yeah, so a little bit of braking, turn in a little bit earlier than you think, because you can't afford to run wide, because you have to lift off the throttle, and then that'll compromise you all the way down the straight. So I've done that, and that's enabled me to get hard onto the throttle again. And there was a slight lift, very slight lift, so but still not too bad. I still, if I didn't do that lift, I ran right to the grass there, so without the lift I would have been on the grass. That was the right thing to do. Keeping it tight, keeping it smooth. Into Cruise. Yeah, so there's a crest just there where the car goes really light, so be very, very careful with. I am on the brakes ever so slightly here, off the power almost entirely, just a tiny bit of maintenance throttle, and as I crest I'm back on the power but being very careful with it, so about 70%, and only now do I commit to full power, because the circuit flattens out at this point, and you've got a bit more stability. Brake just before just at the tarmac change there. It's very subtle, but just at the tarmac change, and then bring the speed down enough. Sometimes you have to continue to bring the speed down as you're in the corner. And obviously trail braking, as I'm doing there again, is going to help you keep tight to the inside and allow you to get onto the power nice and early to give you a good clean run down the hill. Into a very, very scary left-hander. So I've run too wide here, I've turned in too late. Now, if we look at that externally, I could probably afford to have almost an entire car's width over to the left there. You can get half the car onto this curb comfortably. It is risky, but if you are feathering the throttle like I am doing in the middle of this corner, then you can pretty much get away with it. So as a result of being a little bit too wide there, I've had to be a little bit more patient, and earlier on the brakes I've had to wait longer to get onto the power out of the right-hander. Now the line into this slow sequence is very important, so I'm keeping it tight here, and then I'm allowing the car to get right up to that left-hand curb there, and then rolling back out to the right, trail braking to bring it back tight again, keeping it tight, and then a nice good exit there. So again, trail braking to keep it tight here, onto the throttle slightly, off the throttle again, trail braking again, back on the power, full power now as the circuit opens up. So quite a small braking zone here, because you can carry quite a lot of speed through here, and the key thing really is to avoid putting a wheel onto the grass. There's no exit curb there to collect up, so you don't want to be onto this grass, because you struggle to slow the car down, because immediately as you're on full power you're braking again for this third gear left-hander. So I got some oversteer just here, because even though I was feathering the throttle at this point, there we go, it's yeah, there's all sorts of camber changes going on. The car just can get very unsettled, and then as you go downhill into this right-hander, you really have to slow the car more than you think. So you've got quite a late apex there, but it doesn't feel like it when you turn in. So you feel like you're turning in quite early, but you end up having quite a late apex. So you want to be trail braking. Now I'm at the apex. Now I can get back. So this fast left-right with some horrible camber changes and some horrible curves. So you can probably get through there a little bit faster than I have done, because I've given the curbs a little bit too much freedom. But again, playing ever so slightly safe. And then into the three-part right-hander. So you've got to kind of slow the car down again, and then be patient and wait for it, and you'll hook up on this final apex, which is what you want. And then the circuit finally opens out. So let's have a look at that again. So patient, waiting, and then finally. So, a fairly hard braking zone, although it's downhill. But you have to come off the brakes ever so slightly to maximise the lap time as you turn right, because you're braking more to allow you to set up for the left. So as you're tight, you want to come off the brakes, and I have done, and I'm actually back on the power again very slightly. I could probably afford to brake a little bit later with that in mind, and then I wouldn't have to sort of compensate by getting onto the power, which is what I have done there. So again, keeping it tight here, a slight hesitation on the throttle as you come up over the right-hander, because the car again can get unsettled. Now into bright shite, this Marshall path, you want to brake just before that, basically, or pretty much the end of the curb. In fact, yeah, it's actually quite a bit earlier than that. Yeah, for some reason the references in my head don't always match what, reality. But there we go. So I'm actually braking a little bit before the end of the curb there, and you want to be quite careful through here, because it kind of falls away and drops down, and it's very easy to try and carry too much speed and use this exit curb, but really you don't want to be touching that curb. You want to keep it tight, like I have done, which is going to give you a much nicer entry into this uphill right, and will allow you to get onto the power as well for a short burst into the right. So line is very important there. You want to kind of hook up into the camber of the road like I have done, but you don't want to touch, common theme, you don't want to touch the inside curb there. So that's pretty much perfect. The issue is on the exit, the circuit kind of crests again, and you lose that compression, and you really have to feather the throttle, which I am doing, and then only now am I at full power. So if you listen, the hesitation, waiting for the car to settle, and then I'm into full power. Into bergwork. Now this is a very important corner, and a corner that I always find quite tricky, because it's so easy to get your apex line wrong. You want to get obviously close to the inside curb, but you don't want to hit it. So, but at the same time, you want to get a really nice planted early power settled exit for the long straight, the long uphill straight. So it's not really a straight actually, but it's flat out. So yeah, braking downhill into third gear, turning in very early, in fact, because you want to hook up into the camber of the road. So you aim for the camber, keep it tight by trail braking ever so slightly. There we go. And then hard on the power when you dare, pretty much. I was a little bit too early on the power this time, and I had a very, very slight opening of the steering there. And what that did is it pushed me slightly too wide, and then I just about... Did I just about catch this curb? Yeah, ever so slightly caught this curb. And then I had more oversteer now. So fortunately that was the exact amount of opposite lock I needed to just get it back in line without any extra drama. So fortunately I got away with that. And then obviously keeping it tight uphill with this fast section. Thinking about the left-hander all the way up here, where you need to just kind of brake slightly, bring the car in tight. Maintenance throttle, because I'm worried about losing the rear, because the middle of this corner has a slight bump, and if you're not neutral with your inputs in the middle of this corner, it can unsettle the car and fire you off. So patient on the entry, and then I feel like I'm gonna make it, so I'm back on the power now. But there was quite a lot of hesitation from me there, so if you listen, I'm quite hesitant before I get back to full throttle. So I had 2 bites of the cherry as well to get back to full throttle. Flat out through here, which can be done if you avoid the curb, and then braking just before the curb on the left, so that you can keep it tight throughout this right-hander before the carousel. Patient, patient, patient. Now I'm back at throttle. And then into the carousel. Now it's a constant radius corner, so and the banking is pretty much constant as well. So once you've found your sort of maximum speed for the grip available, you pretty much just need to maintain it throughout the whole corner. So you're not trying to slow the car down in the carousel or accelerate. You're just holding it at a steady state and waiting for the exit. And you do actually have to be quite careful in the exit, because the car crests as you come out of the carousel, and you don't want to lose the rear end as you do so. So you can brake quite hard initially just before you drop into the carousel, but as soon as you drop into the carousel, you're off the brakes, and a very slight bit of maintenance throttle, very consistent with the steering, and then preparing yourself for a bit of oversteer on the exit. Now I got my line there ever so slightly wrong, because I ended up touching this curb on the right hand side, which you don't want to do. You want to avoid that curb. So that just created a slightly scary moment for me, and a slight loss of traction as well. I suspect the traction control probably cut in as well. We can listen to it. So into this left-hander, this fast left-hander, flat out. Got to get your line right, of course. Bring the speed down, but it's still quite a fast left-hander. 4th gear. Keeping it off this curb again, and off this curb on the right, dropping it down another gear into 3rd. You can let the car run out onto this curb, but you have to be very, very neutral with your steering at that point. Into this right-hander, you want to turn in sooner than I have done there, so I've missed the apex. You look here at this point, I've missed it by a long way, so I've given up probably a few tenths there, and that's basically stopped me from getting on the power early, because the exit opens up nicely. This is a completely different corner really. You carry a lot more speed into this corner, so only a slight lift and then hard back on the throttle, and then braking before you actually start turning for the left-hander, because it continues to tighten, and if you don't brake before you're at this portion of the corner, you won't hook it up tight to this apex here. Now you can just about roll over that curb, or at least aim to, because more often than not your speed will prevent you from keeping it as tight as you want to be there, which is fine, because you can then aim for this curve there, a slight bit of curb on the exit. Again, when I'm on the curbs, very, very minimal steering input to keep the car under control. So uphill here, you can be very early on the power. Let's go forward. So yeah, quite early on the power there. Sometimes you have to lift as you crest over there, because obviously the circuit falls away again. And into this long left-hander, which is a hotspot for YouTube accidents. Well, at least the right-hander that follows. You need to start slowing the car down very early. So I'm already slowing down now, because it's downhill, it's a long corner, and you want to keep it tight. So I'm already slowing down. I'm already kind of rolling in, ever so slight bit of maintenance throttle, trail braking, back on the power again, just to bring the speed up a little bit. So really concentrate on the optimal line through here. So you want to be back over tight before the next right hander, and you're going to have to basically play with your pedal inputs to maximise the tyre usage to maximise your speed through there. So back on the brakes already as you drop down, hesitating, and then back on the on the throttle, using this exit curb because it's completely flat. Obviously you can't run too wise because you get a 1x, and then into another uphill right-hander which falls away on the exit. This one, for whatever reason, is much slippier on the exit, possibly because this curb has less grip than the tarmac. But yeah, I was a little bit too early on the throttle there and had to collect up some oversteer, as you can see. That was another fortunate moment, which I was able to get away with, luckily. Yeah, so a late apex left-hander here, keeping it tight. This curb here you can use if you're willing to risk it, because it will improve your lap time if you can get away with it. But note that when you do clip it, you have to come off the throttle. You have to be patient because it will unsettle the car. So if you're if you're full throttle, you will get unsettled. So you can take it, but bear in mind that you have to lift to keep the car settled and neutral. Keeping it tight over the jump just as you land, you are onto the brakes, and then keeping it tight again on the exit. You don't want to be over here on the exit. So I'm actually lifting out of the throttle now because I don't want to be too far over to the left. I want to be right, because through this sequence, line is extremely important. So avoid that curb, but get as close to it as you possibly can. So done that. I could have actually got a bit closer to it, but you want to give it a safety margin, because if you do clip it, then it's going to bump you wide, and you're either going to have a massive lift, which is going to compromise you for a good few corners, or you're going to end up in the barrier. So again, line is super important. I was able to keep it flat out all the way down here, because you want to bring the car as you come down and crest at the compress at the bottom. You want to keep the car left, and your aim is to get through this whole section now, this whole sequence flat out, which I've done so, and you want to avoid the curbs to do that. So to do that, you want to be over here to the left, and then bringing the car back over to the right, and then that'll enable you to just avoid this curve on the left again. Oh, that's very close, in fact. Yeah, but there wasn't any that didn't upset the car, so I didn't actually touch it, so that was bang on. And then again, that gives you a nice line through there. So into this fast right-hander, you have to start braking very early because it's a very wide sweeping corner or a very long radius corner. So obviously you have to shave the speed off quite early, but then come off the brakes and allow your speed to carry through. I've done that. I've actually gone a little bit too wide there. Very briefly back on the power, down into third gear, back over to the left. Very patient on the throttle because you're nearing the end of the lap. If it's a qualifying lap, you don't want to throw away all your hard work. So you want to be patient. You don't want to throw it onto this curb. Ideally, you can run it onto this curb, but it's risky. So this lap I haven't done so. I've barely brushed it. There we go. So, but my car is straight, so I've not actually gone over the top of it. So the car hasn't actually been unsettled. So into the second carousel, it's a mini carousel, very small, and the exit of it is very nasty. So you can hook up into the camber. That's very important to get your line right, to hook up into the camber. But then on the exit, you have to be very, very patient. So as I've crested, I've actually come out of the throttle ever so slightly before getting back onto the throttle. I'm waiting for the car to settle, and now I'm back to full power. I probably could have actually got onto the power earlier there, but obviously I didn't want to throw away what was a fairly good lap. So just a very slight slowing of the car into this right-hander, which is going to set you up into the very important final right-hander before the super long straight. So yeah, a little bit slightly wide of the optimal line through there, but that was fine. You can get to full power very briefly before you have to bring it back tight again, and then it's just a matter of timing your full throttle application from here on out. So when you feel like the car is hooked up and you're not going to run out of road on the exit, you want to be hard on the throttle. So I've had 2 stabs at it there. So I've tried here. I feel, no, it's a bit too early. So here, a little bit too early, come out again, and again actually. And then I've let the car run out all the way to the exit. So you can afford to play with the throttle slightly there. But obviously the optimal way is to be hesitating and then committing to the full power, and then that's going to give you a nice exit down this long straight, keeping it tight as you go under the Brixton Bridge. Keeping it flat out, avoiding these curbs here, and then just as you pass that tree on the right there, this big one here, you want to be now you want to be keeping the car tight to this barrier, as tight as you dare. So I could have gone a little bit tighter. Obviously, you don't want to risk it. And then bring the speed down sufficiently to get up onto this curb here, where you need to be very careful with the throttle. As we've said, Audi curbs doesn't really work always. But it's going to give you a much nicer line into the final corner. Slight hesitation on the power until the car's settled and then full power. Well, that was hard work, just commentating. So yeah, it's finally over. I hope that was helpful. Yeah, we've got the 24 hours of the Nürburgring in iRacing coming up in early June. where the only GT3 car available is the Audi. So obviously this tutorial will double up as a guide for that, and anyone that wants to drive the VLN series as well with the Audi. And there are obviously crossover with other GT3 cars. I drive the BMW as well, which can cope with more curb usage, more aggression basically. You have to be more tentative with the Audi. Yeah, so I hope that was useful. Yeah, I'll see you again next week. Thank you very much.